we have already seen some private equity groups leave California over the last year, or at least state that they are planning to, because this may impede their ability to make profits and things like that.
Welcome to the Built on Results podcast, a series of conversations about the issues, the advocacy, and the wins on behalf of emergency physicians. Dr. Kamara Graham is an emergency physician in Sacramento, California. She's also the vice president of the California chapter of the American College of Emergency Physicians. Graham was on the team that won changes to state law that would strengthen protections against the corporate practice of medicine in California. This is episode 12. We know what's best for the patient.
So this actually stems back to the 1930s, prior to emergency medicine even being recognized as a specialty. It started with mining companies who were actually employing physicians to take care of their employees in remote locations. And the physicians' loyalty to the companies started to interfere with their ability to give care to patients. And so in California, long before emergency medicine, we actually had the prohibition on the corporate practice of medicine. And that was further refined in the 1960s and debated, and there were a few changes. But that ultimately led us to last year and SB 351, which is what solidifies the corporate practice of medicine bar in California and further extends that to private equity companies and hedge funds, and limits their ability to have any type of persuasion as to the medical care that's given to patients, and allows the Attorney General to actually act if there is a violation of that.
Does the new law close loopholes in previous statutes, or did it rewrite existing law to address today's realities?
I think it's a response to that influx of private equity into healthcare that we've seen across the country, and really a response to those decision makers at the bedside. So I think it was really further refining what had started in 1938 to really meet the needs of healthcare providers and physicians at the bedside today.
Why is it important that the decision-making process stay at the bedside?
So I think this really relates back to a lot of what we talk about as emergency physicians within TALA as well. So every patient deserves high quality care, no matter their ability to pay, no matter the time of day. And this really helps us be able to give that care without having any concern of whether or not we're going to be reimbursed for it, or whether our employer is going to have an opinion on it. When you are in the emergency department, when your family member is seeing us and they are sick, they deserve to have all of their care be focused on what's right for the patient in front of them. That's very similar to the ethos of EMTALA and why we are so proud of what we do as emergency physicians. And this lets us continue on without having those outside pressures.
Tell us about your experience with the legislative process.
With this bill and many of the bills that we work on, we face a lot of not necessarily competition, but some frustration from other industries that maybe depend on private equity, or who don't feel that that's really the best way we should go. We face that with any bill that we run. The first step is really to try and work with folks to see where we can find common ground, and to really make sure that our North Star remains at the patient at the bedside and the physicians that are giving that care. And so the thing about advocacy that I think is really important that we don't always talk about is that, like with SB 351, this is an amazing win for us, but it's not over. Our year this year is continuing those advocacy efforts to make sure that we defend against a lot of the attacks that we can see coming that are trying to change this bill or create loopholes or change the original context of it. And so while we may celebrate some of these wins, the work is not ever over. And so that's why having our amazing team and our lobbyists that are really understanding what's coming from all other aspects of the industry is important. But the advocacy isn't over just because the bill passed. And we have to continue to fight and keep that North Star ahead of us.
The law's been in place about a year so far. How's it going?
I think it's a little bit early to tell long term. However, we have already seen some private equity groups leave California over the last year, or at least state that they are planning to, because this may impede their ability to make profits and things like that. But that's ultimately the goal of the bill, is to make sure that the lay shareholders and the directors, who may not have the same ethical standards as the clinician at bedside, are not impacting the decisions made for patients. And so while there there may be some change and disruption in the industry, I think our goal as ACEP is to also be there to provide resources and help as much as we possibly can to walk people through that, but also to make sure that regardless of what group any of us work for, that our goal is the highest quality care for our patients in the emergency department and support of our physicians.
How did ACEP National provide support for the chapter's work on the bill?
I think ACEP's been wonderful. They have always been a sounding board for us. They've helped us with resources when we need to from the legislative side. They also are a great voice. This isn't something that's just happening in California. This is happening nationwide. And so really what we hope to see is that we're able to take some of these important concepts and help legislate for change across the country.
And even after you've won, it's really a never-ending process.
It is. We may have that initial win and pass the law, but we have to make sure that we're not also being naive of any attacks or changes to the law that may be coming down the line. We also want to make sure that we're seen as the partner to legislators. We are the emergency physicians. We are the specialists in this area. And so we want to be the person that they come to when they have questions about how this may affect their constituents. And so it's not really about winning or losing in advocacy. Really, it's about, are we making good changes for our patients and our communities? And how can we use our voice and our education and our training and our wisdom to make sure that we're at the table?
Every day from now until March 28th, we'll feature a different story about the work of ACEP and its chapters. We'll talk about advocacy wins and work still underway to make sure you can do your job. We kicked off the series on March 11th. You can listen to those conversations and read more about ACEP's work to address corporate influence in medicine by clicking the links in the show notes. There's also a website, acep.org/results. You've been listening to the Built on Results podcast, a production of the American College of Emergency Physicians. We're back tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.